Griff, good afternoon. I know that game has been hashed out. I'm kind of weary from all the Georgia-Texas conversation, but what's your final takeaway from your trip to Texas?
Well, it kind of went like I said it would. If number 13 played, I felt good about Georgia. That was really big. Sarkisian talked about after the game and the difference Mikal Williams made when you've got a train wrecker like that chasing a quarterback out of the pocket. It enabled Jalen Walker to spy the quarterback and make sacks. And, having two guys like that versus one up front, Paul, really makes a difference. And Georgia came with an edge. I think we've seen the best version of Georgia we've seen probably in a couple of years defensively. And they had a lot to prove. And I think they proved it. And they did it against a really good team. I got to tell you, Texas, very hospitable until a call went against them. And if there's something that I would say, it's that it was disappointing. I felt like the SEC really went out of its way to welcome Texas and Oklahoma. I thought the media days were sensational. I thought it was a great move to move them to Dallas. They were incredible hosts. I felt like the schedule worked out in Texas' favor. They got to open their league schedule against Mississippi State at home. No one messed with their rivalry game. And then they did play Georgia, but they got the dogs at home. And I guess my parting shot, my parting thought is that the first time something went against Texas, they really showed a side of Texas that I don't think we want to see again. And I think the rest of the SEC is going to be on guard for this. Texas used to getting its way in the Southwestern Conference in the Big 12. Texas, you're in the SEC now. And Greg Sankey is not going to tolerate any school acting above and beyond. And last I heard, if this sort of behavior happens again, they'll pull their liquor license and hit these schools in the pocket. You cannot have the SEC go like that, and don't think we will, Paul. I think that situation's been taken care of, and feel confident moving forward that we'll see Texas on its best behavior the rest of the season.
Well, if you're confident, Griff, then we are because we have faith in Griff. Let's move on to the broader, bigger.
I mean, what you should. I mean, I'm right most of the time.
Let's move on to the broader, bigger
Sure.
picture of the SEC. Just kind of, I know you've done some work at your publication this week, breaking down
Yeah.
layers of the league. What's it look like to you?
Well, it's interesting the way it's broken down. I mean, we've got a lot of one-loss teams in the SEC. It's a fascinating race right now, and you mentioned that at the top of the program. I mean, Texas A&M kind of like a playoff game, right? I mean, LSU has a very manageable schedule. If they win out, they're in the SEC championship game. It's that simple. A&M, they beat LSU, then they're going to have an opportunity to play Texas at the end of the year. I think that could be a play-in game. I like the Aggies this weekend. I think we're going to see a couple play-in games if you look at the rest of the schedule. Texas A&M and Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and we have the AJC SEC Power Poll we do each week. And right here, you're seeing the top 5 teams as voted on by 9 representatives from around the SEC in Tier 1, Georgia, Texas, LSU, Texas A&M, Tennessee. Maybe Vanderbilt belongs in there. They only have one loss. They're going to have an opportunity this week against Texas to prove that they're for real. That game is going to be in Nashville, and there may even be as many Vanderbilt fans there as Texas fans. And then you have Tier 2, Alabama at the top. You mentioned it. The Tide is not out of this race. Neither is Ole Miss. I mean, I was listening to Brent Venables yesterday talking about Ole Miss, and my goodness, I mean, in their last 11 games, dating back to last year, they've outscored opponents 73-0 off turnovers and only given up 2 yards a carry this season. So let's not overlook Alabama and Ole Miss quite yet. I saw Missouri coach Eli Drinkwitz talking about, his coaches have made a very important discovery that they need to call the plays that their players can execute. I thought that was interesting that Coach Drink came upon that realization halfway through this season. But he said it. At A&M, they were calling plays and trying to win the game from the coaching box, and now he's realizing, that they've got to play to their strengths and avoid their weaknesses a little bit more. So that Missouri-Alabama game, very intriguing to me. One of the many games, yeah, that's one of the very many intriguing games. 3:30 ABC game. I know you downplayed it a little bit, but I think that's a very important game. That's a loser-out game. Whoever loses that game can kiss the playoffs goodbye, in my opinion. So the expansion of the college football playoffs has had its intended role. I think there's a lot more fans that are still engaged. Their teams are still in the mix. And I think the race for the SEC championship this year is dynamic, and that's what I've really got my attention on right now as Georgia tries to get back there and win another SEC championship under Kirby Smart.
Let me ask you about Alabama because that's certainly been a big topic here, and,
Sure.
I think you're right about. I know you're right about what you said with the winner of that game, but just your assessment. You've covered that Alabama Tennessee game from the Tennessee side, the Alabama side. We all know it's important, but Tide fans are really down right now.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm not so sure their record would be any different with Nick Saban, though. I mean, this was going to be a tough year for Alabama one way or another. When you include these, Texas and Oklahoma and the way the schedule broke down. I thought Kalen DeBoer did a great job getting Jalen Milroe at his peak when they played Georgia. I'm not sure that I saw Milroe play that effective as he did in the first half against Georgia. That was what it was going to take to beat the Dogs. Sleeping Dogs that night didn't wake up till the second half. So I'm not sure Saban beats Georgia. Now, as far as what's happening right now, a little bit loss of composure. It looks like a little bit of that loss of discipline, maybe catching up with Alabama. Maybe they'd be, I think they would be in better shape with Nick Saban. But, to Nick's point, the game is hard to manage right now. And that's part of the reason why he got out. I mean, you heard the comments he made when he got out about how difficult it is to manage. And now that's Kalen DeBoer's headache. And Hugh Freeze's also, I might add. I asked Coach Freeze yesterday, he said he needed to manage Auburn in a way where he could instill some more confidence in these kids. And I asked him to expound on that. And he talked about coaching them hard. And I asked about the fine line between coaching a kid hard without chasing him to the portal. And Free said, look, if they're the kind of kid that's not going to respond to hard coaching and discipline, then they're probably not going to win a championship with him anyway. So, he talked to his coaches and they basically said, look, they're going and coaching the way they know how. And if kids can't handle the discipline and they can't handle the tough coaching that it takes to win at a championship level, they're not going to worry about that. So I think Auburn, I'll be interested to see how they respond this week. They're playing at Kentucky, another team trying to pick themselves up after losing by 4 touchdowns to a suddenly resurgent Florida team that may be as dangerous as anyone these days, Paul. I know the Gators are off this week, but a couple of weeks away from the cocktail party, Georgia doesn't have much time to celebrate that win over Texas. I think they could be in for a challenge.
Yeah, Griff, you told us about 7 weeks ago that you were hearing that the natives were pretty restless in Gainesville and maybe about to buy out Billy Napier. What are you hearing today?
Yeah, and they were, and I'm still not sure Billy secured his job. I mean, if you look at the rest of the Florida schedule, there's a lot of challenging games left. Obviously, a win over Georgia would go a long way towards that. But I think Billy's brought himself back into that area where we go, well, now wait a minute. What if they beat Georgia? What if they win at Texas? What if they win that home game? How many more games does Billy Napier have to win? This is the $1 million question, or the $27 million question, depending on how you look at it. How many more games does Billy Napier need to win to save his job out of these remaining 5 games? I think Florida State's a gimme now. You've seen that program culture got broken when all the players opted out. Norvell lost control there. Close call for Alabama if they really did pursue that head coach. But what's really fair to ask of Billy Napier? Let's give him the Florida State game. Out of Georgia, Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, does he need to win 2? Does he need to win 1? 1 would obviously get him bowl eligible, assuming that they beat Florida State. I'm hearing 2. I think it's a lot of how they look. And a lot of how DJ Lagway looks. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that's throwing some missiles. I mean, I think this kid averaged about 37 yards of completion against Kentucky. Not a lot of completions, but very effective, very deep, stretching the field vertically. They got a running back out of the state of Georgia, scored 5 touchdowns. Where was this guy at on the depth chart? Holy cow, what a performance. So we're going to see how the Gators finish. A lot of drama down there in Gainesville. Very interesting situation in this era of parity. Did we jump the gun, or did the Gator boosters jump the gun in their quest? We talked about potential candidates, and Jamie Chadwell, a guy that I really championed. He suffered a really tough loss last night to Kennesaw State. That did not look good. We talked about Lane Kiffin with a couple of losses this year. Is the bloom off of that rose? You kind of ridiculed the Indiana coach a little bit. He keeps winning. Could he be a potential candidate, or is it best to keep Billy and make sure you secure that star freshman quarterback that's emerging? So storylines plenty out of Gainesville and around the SEC. Really fascinating time in this league, Paul.
Griffith joining us top of the show here on this Thursday. We have much more to do.